Hi there, you're listening to the Guitar Speak podcast, produced here in Sydney, Australia. My name's Matt Wakeling. Thank you so much for joining me. Now today, in episode number 63, I speak to a couple other blokes called Matt, both from the UK, as it turns out. Matthew Veck-Gilodi is the guitarist in the massive band Deaf Havana. They've just released a fantastic new album, All These Countless Nights, and as I speak, they are touring Australia, opening up for Placebo, and they're going to headline a couple of their own shows as well, which is great. We talk about touring life, recording, crafting fantastic guitar tones in these anthemic songs, and much more. We only had about 20 minutes with Max. He had a really packed press schedule, but we fit in a lot of guitar and band talk, which was really fun. We'll then move on to an interview with Matt Nine. Matt is a product manager of Boss Europe and was involved in such amazing new products as the Boss MS3. We talked through that, plus celebrating over 40 years of Boss. In fact, 40 years exactly of Boss compact pedals this year, so it's a really exciting year. We also get a bit more about Matt's background and have a quick chat about The Guitar Nerds, which is a podcast that Matt co-hosts, which is a really great show. All right, we're going to get stuck right into it. What we're going to hear now is a little bit of Matt Veck-Gilodi's fantastic guitar playing in the band Deaf Havana. This is a track called Fever, and then we move into our conversation with him. Check it out. Mate, thank you so much for your time. Really, really great to speak with you. We are very excited in Australia that you'll be touring here again in later in 2017. I think you guys were last here in 2013, I believe. I think you would have been doing that tour as well by then.
Yeah. That's that would have been the last time we were in Oz. Yeah, it was just on Soundwave. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, cool, awesome. So this time you're out opening for Placebo, your fellow UK band, and really cool to see you've got some of your own dates as well. Yes,
yeah. Can't wait.
Brilliant. Now you guys have had a huge year. Also, the last 12 months have been massive. You've released your fourth album, All These Countless Nights, which has done fantastically well. I'm interested in talking to you about the writing and recording process. Now, just to back up a little bit, Matt, you joined the band, am I right, around 2012? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's actually exactly right, yeah.
Okay, cool. So Deaf Havana formed in 2005, so they were already a well-oiled machine, which you were intimately acquainted with, of course. When you record a new album, can you talk me through the process a little bit then? So for the recent album, do you guys jam out songs? Are songs brought in fully written? What's the process there?
Okay. Well, with us, my brother James, our singer, he'll write like the majority of the song, like and demo it on his iPad. Like he'll have a rough version of it, so we all have an idea. And with and normally what we'd done on previous records was we wouldn't have a lot of time between having like say just enough songs to go on a record, and then going straight into the studio and doing them. So the songs never had like much time to develop. But this time, we actually did have like a long time to really think about the songs, and we had a lot more songs to choose from as well.
Okay.
And so we spent like a week with a producer just jamming songs out until we got so bored of them and got them absolutely right. Yeah. And then we did that so that we could then go into another studio and record most of the records as a live band to get that sort of energy in there, and that was amazing for us to do because that's something we've always wanted to do, but just never like had the, as I was saying before, the time to really work on it. Okay. And so that's how we did that, and then obviously on top of that, we then went to a smaller studio to then do like say a couple of guitar overdubs and do vocals at the end. Mm-hmm. But it was actually quite a communal experience this time, and it can be the opposite if you just do it as like from the drums up, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
So,
Cool. That's cool. Oh, that's interesting. So that's the first time as a band you kind of sat in a room for the actual tracking.
Yeah,
the initial
well,
tracking.
properly.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. What do you think that brings to the experience?
It just makes it feel more together, I think, and it gives it a lot more energy because, and I think for all of us as well, we do play better when we're all playing together, like as a band. And then the other thing it does is, say our producer, if he realised we were playing to a different tempo than what we had a tempo track at, but it felt like the groove felt better, then he would just wind that in. So there's some tracks that don't have a consistent tempo all the way through because he just preferred the vibe that we were getting from one another. Yep. So just little things like that, I think it gives a record more character, and it's more I don't know, it's more artistically gratifying for all of us in the band to go back and listen to it, I think.
Yeah, cool. When I hear a track like Fever, there's those there's massive layers of feedback at the front and end of the track. You're obviously standing next to an amp or something for that.
Yeah, that was actually weirdly that feedback was we got that from it was an Ampeg bass.
Oh, okay.
Like that, it's the one that the guy from Death from Above 1979 uses, so it's really high gain, but it just gets the most brutal sounding feedback. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's massive. It's so cool. On top of the distorted bass part as well, it's a pretty chunky track. That's great.
Yeah, man.
Nice. So with
awesome.
the guitar parts, how formed are they? I guess are they formed in that sort of pre-production jam that you guys are doing with your producer, picking out the songs?
Yeah.
There's a lot of hooks
for the most part.
Cool.
Yeah. For the most part, they're all done there. But then we did spend a lot of time, me and our producer, just for a couple of the tracks, really just working at like getting it absolutely perfect. But then there were other ones which were like would have been first takes or completely out of the live sessions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's an interesting way to do it.
Nice. Yeah, the parts sound great. Like the solo on Fever is awesome. It's like perfect for that tune. Listening to Sing, the little counter melodies behind that big anthemic chorus are great. They're cool parts.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice. Awesome. What gear are you using? I've seen you a lot playing a blues Strat, but recently I've seen pictures of you with a Les Paul. What were you using for the album?
The record, I did use a Strat for a lot of the lead lines. Mm-hmm. It was an old 70s one that a friend of ours had and lent us, and it's the heaviest Strat I've ever felt like picked up to play. It was from a period where they used to like over wire the pickups, and so it comes out incredibly hot.
Great.
And so and because it's so much meatier, for some reason it just rips a bit more than a lot of other Strats.
Yeah, cool.
But so that's what I used for a fair bit of it. And we also had a 68 Jazzmaster that we used, and so for a lot of the really dirty sounding leads, that was what we ran through. Like we ran it through an old Silvertone head as well.
Awesome.
So a lot of it was that sort of thing. But yeah, recently live I've been using a Les Paul because it just sounds ridiculous.
That's a big jump in fatness. Yeah, that's cool. Nice. What about pedals? What do you run much of a pedal board?
Yeah. This is like the first time. I'd never been that like concerned with pedals until we recorded this record, and our producer brought in this huge like trunk that was just full of distortion pedals, and
awesome.
I was like, fair enough. And so like I mean, I've got a couple of different octave pedals that I use. I use a little tiny Pog to get for the pokier lead lines.
Okay, yeah.
And then I have and I've got a really horrible sounding octave. Actually, it's an Electro Harmonics octave multiplexer. It's like the cheapest one you can get, but it makes it sound like a synth because it's monophonic, so it really glitches if you hold a note too long, which is cool.
That's cool. That's fun.
Yeah, and then I've got mate, I love that sort of thing because you can never play the same thing twice because it just sounds totally different. And I've got use a little nano muff as well, actually, which is pretty cool. But other than that, it's just boring delay pedals that I've got.
Yeah.
Haven't got an exciting one like a Strymon or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, listening to the album tracks, the guitars they're massive. They're not over processed at all. I think that's part of the charm of this record. The guitars are really raw and ripping, so that's cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's something that our producer really wanted as well.
Yeah,
like,
cool.
And we did as well. Like, there's so many bands where the guitars are so well produced. You can just, I mean, sure, to a point it sounds great to listen to it through a great stereo system, but it's too clean a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And then there's not a lot of variation when a record has really well produced guitars. It's often like, well, that's the guitar tone and that's the way it goes.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
Got the rest of the record. Whereas like on our record, well, maybe it's just because I was there whilst I was recording it. Like, but for me, the guitar sounds are different. It is slightly different on every single song because there was a different purpose, and it wasn't overproduced. That was something we really wanted to do.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I dig that. I did pick up the different tones and things. Something like Sing, that guitar in the intro and in the breakdown, that's super flabby and sounds like some kind of fuzz that's just about to explode or something. Do you remember what you used for that?
We just ran it through a JHS pedal straight into the desk.
Oh, serious? Yeah.
Through two different guitars, just double tracked it and tried to copy that like Smashing Pumpkins sound.
Yeah, awesome.
And
very cool. Very, very cool. So when you're touring, and you guys are like doing heaps of big festivals, you've done Glastonbury, which looked incredible. And the big ones down here as well. We mentioned Soundwave. What do you take out? Is there some sort of compromise about how much gear you can take? Do you take your own amps? What happens there? Do you use backline?
Well, in the UK and anywhere we can drive to, we'll take our own full backline.
Yeah.
But say like when we're coming to Australia, we're taking all our pedals and different guitars. And I think our drummer's taken some hardware, but the rest of it we're renting out there to spec that we've forwarded, advanced.
Okay, sure.
Just because for a fly shows, it just makes it so much cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's just easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So what amps do you ask for in the riders?
I always go for orange. I think either a Rocker 100 or a Rocker 50.
Okay, cool.
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah, nice. So you're taking out the Les Paul. Are you still taking a Strat as well? How many guitars would you take? Say for the Australian tour, how many guitars would you bring with you?
To Australia, we're taking like 2 each. So I'm actually going to take. I don't think I'm taking a Strat for this run.
Okay.
But which will be a first for me actually.
Yeah. Right.
I think I'm taking I'm taking a like Tele hybrid that a friend of ours made that just, I don't know, it sounds like a Telecaster some days and then sounds like a meaty like Les Paul another day. Yeah. And so I'm taking that and a Les Paul, yeah.
Cool.
And then my brother's taking 2 Jazz Masters out.
Okay, nice.
Which is wicked.
That'll sound great. That sounds like a good combo. Listening to a track like Trigger, there's some ska influence in there. I'm wondering for yourself, Matt, who were your influences as a guitar player when you were developing?
As a guitar player, one of the main ones is John Frusciante from Chili Peppers.
Awesome.
Just the taste in I don't know, lead playing and space to leave in, but also just being able to jam. That was the main thing for me and my brother, I think. Like just growing up, being able to play together like that.
Yeah.
But as well as that, really, people like Johnny Marr really got to me as well, just because I'd never really thought that you could play guitar in that way. It'd always been a bit more like solo-y, and then realised, I can make something sound really nice by just going up and down these weird little scales. Mm-hmm. But then going forwards as well, people like listening to just Josh Homme play anything, that really blew my mind as well.
Okay, yeah.
Just because it's so different to how I'd approached like playing a solo before as well.
Okay.
But that people like that would probably be my 3 main.
Yeah, awesome. I remember seeing the Chili Peppers in '93, I think, and I was gutted because John Frusciante had just left the band.
Yeah.
I think he'd bailed
Oh,
out in
man.
Japan, and they rescheduled. And I can't remember who they got out. It might have been Arik Marshall was in the band very briefly, and he was great. But I think some years later I saw them. I think it was around 2000, and John Frusciante was back in the band, and it was epic. It was
Yeah,
so
yeah,
cool, and the jamming was nuts. He and Flea were
mate.
just trading
Yeah,
off all night.
exactly. They just had that. When they had him in the band, they were just a great band, like a great live band to watch.
Yeah,
Like they had that perfect pairing between bass, drums, and guitar,
absolutely.
which is like something really rare.
Yes. Now you guys are about to tour with Placebo, as we mentioned. Have you worked with those guys before?
Yeah, we've done a few shows with them last year at the end, and then one this year as well so far. So yeah, really looking forward to, well, mainly just being able to see them every night as well.
Yeah, cool. That'll be great. Yeah, they've been, I couldn't believe it, 20 years. They've been around a while.
Yeah, it's shot on.
Very cool. Now, as I mentioned, like the last 12 months and probably longer has been pretty intense for you guys, and obviously very fruitful. So you're in Australia in September. What happens
Yeah.
after that tour? What's the rest of your year look like?
Well, so we're in Oz for a couple of weeks,
Yeah.
I think, and then come back. And our next proper run, we've got a few little festivals sort of things in the UK after that. And then we're doing another, like a headline run in the UK in November, and then going straight from that into Germany for a week or so afterwards. And then after that, we're pretty much done for the year, other than trying to write some new music.
Okay. Yep. I was going to ask, is there much thought for a new album, or are you just too much in the thick of it right now?
No, yeah, that's definitely something we're thinking about and trying to write some songs at the moment. Just because it took us a long time to get our last record out, and so we don't want to leave it that long. But obviously, if the songs aren't good enough, we're not going to rush it. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
Will any of the tracks that missed the last cut make a reappearance, or will you guys start with a clean slate?
Well, I think we'll aim to start with a clean slate. But if we get like a couple of songs along the like down the road, and we realise, oh, this one that we tried to fit on the record but didn't fit would fit really well here, then yeah, I'm sure we'll be open to like giving it a go.
Yeah, cool. All right, that sounds awesome. Sounds really great. So I won't run through all the dates, but I know you guys are here in September between the 4th and the 14th with Placebo, and you've got two headlining gigs here, which is great. So you're in Melbourne and Sydney, so that's definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah, it'll be amazing. Can't wait. Especially excited to do our headline shows as well, like, because
cool.
we've never done that over in Australia before. So yeah, that'll be amazing.
Okay, excellent. Fantastic. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time. Really cool to speak to you.
No,
and,
thanks for having me, mate. Yeah.
Looking forward to hearing you in about a month or so.
All right, fella. Cheers. Have a good one.
Cheers, buddy. Bye. All right, there you go. Matthew Veck-Gilodi from Deaf Havana. Now, their Australian dates, they're supporting Placebo, as we mentioned. Their own headlining shows are Thursday the 7th of September in Melbourne and Wednesday the 13th of September in Sydney. So check out those shows. If you're in those areas, should be fantastic. All right, let's move on to my conversation with Matt Knight. As I mentioned, Matt is very much involved in Boss products these days, and it was great to get the lowdown on some Boss action, as well as finding out a little bit more about Matt as well. I started our conversation by asking Matt what got him involved in guitars in the very, very first place.
It was a weird one because I was thinking about this sort of thing this morning before we came on, and I was like, when did I first start playing? And it was probably when I was about 15. I don't know if there was like a defining moment. I remember a friend of mine, there used to be a small group of us, and every Sunday we'd do the same thing. We'd go to my mate's house and we'd probably end up playing like PlayStation 2, or we were like massively into Warhammer when we were kids.
Uh-huh.
And then he had like a classical guitar, and I think we just like hammering notes out on it. But then I suppose the music I was listening to, he bought a guitar. So there was four of us. One of them bought a guitar, one of them bought a bass, and then I was like, I really want a guitar. So I said to my parents, I was like, I really want to learn playing guitar, and they were like, really didn't want my dad especially was like, I really don't want to buy you a guitar.
Okay.
And it's not because I was like, the money or anything. He's just like, look, we bought a piano for you and your sister. I had 2 years of piano lessons and I can't play a single note. I think I can like knock out a C major chord and I can remember what the chord note, the notes are only from playing guitar.
Yeah.
But sort of managed to convince them, and I bought like a Court. Didn't really know what I was buying, but went to this tiny little guitar store in my hometown. And then Sundays moved from kind of like PlayStation and sort of like Warhammer to like playing guitar. So all 4 of us would end up going to my mate's house on a Sunday, and we'd all just start playing. My mate bought a 7-string Ibanez, which was probably like the most popular guitar at the time.
Okay.
This is like 2002, 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
And yeah, it kind of moved on from there. We had a really great guitar shop in my hometown at that time. So before the days of the internet and people doing online shopping, there was obviously a slightly more thriving store business that all advertised in guitar magazines. So you saw the same shops pop up in magazines every single month.
Yeah, yeah.
And my one was always in there, and it was great. It was in a building from, I think the building was about 600 years old. It was an old coach house from the 1500s.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was amazing. It had a basement, then 4 floors, like all kind of wooden rafters. It was absolutely packed. It was run by a really nice guy called Colin, who I got in touch with again recently to say, I know I probably spent way too much time in that shop, but you'll be pleased to know that I'm basically like really in the industry now, and it's all because I used to come to that shop, and that's kind of what spurred it on. I went there every Saturday for probably 3 years, from the time I started playing guitar till the day that he decided to close it, really. And that was always my kind of element for learning about new stuff, and I think that's what spurred on my kind of passion for more of the gear side of things than it even was the playing side of things. So I think if it kind of wasn't for that shop and my 4 mates getting together, I don't think we would have ever kind of ended up where we are now, really.
Yeah, that's cool. What kind of tunes were you guys playing?
God, at the time it was, I mean, I suppose the kind of people that got me into playing guitar were Radiohead. At the time, at the time, How to the Thief was only about to come out, and I think it came out not long after I started playing guitar. And Johnny Greenwood's guitar playing on that was kind of inspiring for me for the kind of effects side of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of in 1998 to 2001, I suppose, as well. There was much more now, or much more then rather, was kind of like music TV. So like Kerrang and like Scuzz and all those music channels.
Okay, yeah.
Chili Peppers were like my biggest band. So me and a few friends started a band, and we basically were a Red Hot Chili Peppers tribute band. We basically did like 50% covers of their stuff, and then like some other covers, and then like one tune of our own. And Rage Against the Machine, I suppose, was another one, especially for the effects side of things.
Yeah.
But kind of all that sort of new metal stuff that was popular at that time, Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, Papa Roach, like all those kind of bands, all those sort of like slightly more riff heavy kind of things were way more popular. And then it sort of evolved from there. But I feel now my kind of guitar tastes are like, I still love that music, but the kind of playing that I'm listening to now is like so far away from that. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I kind of wish that I'd been like, I'd like opened my eyes slightly wider as a player when I was slightly younger. But I suppose you get what you're into, and that's kind of what spurs your passion on, really.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think your tastes change, and even in terms of gear, your idea of what a great tone is or how you go about it, that's always kind of shifting. Perhaps likewise.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think it was just like simple, just like turn the distortion button on, and it's just like, right, what riff has distortion, and then kind of just what can I tune down to drop D, and then go from there, basically.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh man, I can relate. Bashing out rock and roll stuff, absolutely. You're obviously involved with Boss now, and you're a real pedal nut. Do you remember your first guitar pedal?
Yes, we've talked about this before, but it goes back to this kind of this mythical shop. So when we first discovered it, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, there's a guitar shop in town. That's where I bought my guitar from." So went down there on a Saturday, and it was kind of like, I don't know, it's still, after so many years of working in a guitar store. I still do get that feeling of when I walk into a new store, being like, "Oh, there's so much cool stuff to see." But I've seen so many, it's kind of like faded slightly over time. But I still remember the first time I walked in, I was like, "Oh, it's amazing!" You know, I had loads of books and there was loads of cool pedals. Obviously, the brands were like sort of limited at that time, but I didn't know what any of them did. But I really wanted. I knew I was going to get a guitar, and I was like, "Oh, you know," was walking in, and it was a Dan Electro Cool Cat Chorus.
Oh, okay,
And I can't remember whether I tried it out or not. And so this is one of the old ones that used to run on two 9-volt batteries. It was
the big 18 volter
thing. Sounded great.
Yeah. Really heavy.
Yeah. But I was just
solid.
like, I was just like, I just want a guitar pedal, and that one looked cool. I think it was cheap at the time. It might have been second hand. But that was definitely one of the first, if not the first one I ever remember buying. So it wasn't like a distortion pedal or anything.
Yeah.
But then one of the kind of, suppose, the things that maybe was like the definitive moment that kicked it off was they had loads of books, and they had the Boss book, which was written around the time that I started playing guitar, which was the history of Boss from 1977 to now.
Okay,
and all
cool.
the compacts. And I remember buying that, and it had a CD in the back of it, and it demoed all of the pedals. And I remember taking it home, put it on my CD player, listening to it, reading the book from cover to cover. And it was just kind of like, that's it. I just want to buy loads of guitar pedals. I found them so interesting. And what I used to do is I used to have a Sunday job with my granddad at the time, and we'd go and cut grass, and he'd give me like £5 or £10, and I'd like basically go to the store, and they'd let me like put it behind the counter and then pay a little bit off each week. So what I do is I just go in every week and put like a £5 or £10 towards another guitar pedal, and I think the one I remember doing it for the longest was probably a Boss BF3 flanger, because I think at the time it was £90.
Okay.
So it took me like 3 months to pay that off, 3 or 4 months to pay that off. But I used to do that all the time, just go in, what's new, kind of ask it's one of the things I remember the first time I plugged in a delay pedal. I didn't actually know what a delay pedal was.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in the basement of this place with a couple of friends. We plugged it in. I think it was probably a Boss DD5, maybe even a DD3, and kind of going, don't really get it. I don't understand what this is. But I didn't really know anything there. I don't really know any riffs. I didn't know any licks. I was like plugging it in going. But yeah, it was just kind of that like intrigue into kind of what these boxes do for your guitar tone. But yeah, I think that Dan Electro was probably the first. I think that's the one that I always remember being the first one that I kind of had.
Yeah, cool. And where did guitar playing and this love for gear, where did it take you from there?
So I suppose for me it was kind of always a hobby. It was a real hobby for a long time. Then it became a bit more of a passion, and I worked in this. I went to the store, every weekend for kind of 3 years. Knew the guys really well. They were always super friendly. We weren't one of those. We weren't a group, and I especially wasn't, and I suppose it paid off later down the line, was never one to kind of like hassle the store, like go in and try loads of stuff out with never the intention of buying it. Like I only really want to try something if it was really quiet and they were like, do you want to plug something in, or if I was looking to buy something. So I went in there every day for 3 years, and then one day I went in, loads of stuff was on sale, and the guy was like, I've got some sort of like bad news. And I was like, what's up? He's like, I've decided to close. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And he was like, yeah, look, I've had enough doing paperwork. It was fun like 20 years ago. And I think at that point, guitar shops were like declining, and like guitar was actually at like an all-time low. There wasn't a lot of music apart from the kind of new metal stuff coming out that was kind of guitar heavy, especially in the UK. There's so much dance and like Ibiza kind of music that there wasn't any instruments in it. So he decided to close, and it closed for about 2 years, and then, or maybe a year and a half. And then one day my friend phoned me and said, guitar shops reopened. I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, opened like on Wednesday. So first Saturday, day after, after a week of school or whatever, I went down, introduced myself to the guy, and there was a few people coming in and out, and I went the next weekend. It was busier. And I spent a lot of time talking to him. People kept coming in, but it was like, because the building was so old, it had this like old latch door, which was really stiff. And one day it was so busy, I just like held the door open for him and like opened it and greeted customers. And at the end of the day, he gave me 20 quid. And he was just like, "Oh, can you come back? Can you come back next Saturday?" And that basically got me a job in this store at the weekends.
That's great.
And I'm still friends with that guy now. And so I just started, turning up on Saturdays. Did the odd days here and there if he needed it, because it was just him, and he'd basically moved down from London. He had a big job in a record company, decided he'd had enough and wanted to do this guitar store. And we were talking about it recently. He even decided, like, I'm not going to open at Christmas because I got my family and it's just me. And I was like, oh, I'll tell you what, me and my mate will do it. And I think this was like Christmas Eve or the 23rd of December. And we basically like sat in this store, and it was the biggest day that we'd ever had in that kind of 8 months that we'd opened. We did like £5,000, which was ridiculous at the time, considering we didn't really have any guitars over maybe 600 quid.
Okay.
At the time, we didn't have a lot of pedals. But it was brilliant because I spent so much time there, and he'd let me take stuff home. He'd let me buy stuff, cheap. He'd let me try stuff all day. We'd sit there. He'd teach me about guitar playing. He'd teach me about different amps. And then I moved from there. I moved to go to music college, which kind of didn't work out. I realised I was never going to make any money actually being a musician. But I wanted to stay where I was, which is in Brighton. Handed in my CV to the local guitar shop and ended up getting a job there because I'd had previous experience. And then it kind of it snowballed from there. I ended up working there for 8 or 9 years, worked my way up to the manager for a few years, moved from there to Anderton's Music in Guildford. And then, throughout that 10 years of working in music stores, I made such a network of connections of people that also worked in the industry that I ended up getting the job where I am now. And I think that's the crazy thing. And unless you're in the MI industry, you don't realise how kind of entwined it is. Everyone's worked for someone else, or they've worked for other companies. People move from one to the other, back again, and then they bring people with them. People leave. So you tend to find that, and I found this at NAMM this year, is that you go and everyone knows everyone. And it's actually a really small world, the kind of like MI industry. So that's kind of helped me along. But just kind of having the passion for actually working in retail was the kind of thing that kept it going. A lot of people don't like working in stores, can't kind of handle how busy it gets sometimes. But for me, it was always great to kind of sell someone something. And if it was a guitar, it was even better because I loved guitar playing. So if it wasn't for me going down on that Saturday, I probably would have never held the door open and never got that 20 quid and then never come back the following week. So it was kind of that, really. It was just a friendly guy in a store, handing me some money for helping him out, and it went on from there, really.
That's cool. I dig that kind of community vibe as well. Like a bunch of my guests, whether they've been musicians or involved in the MI industry, so many of them have said, there was a local shop that encouraged me and taught me how to set up guitars, or just hung out and showed me gear, or showed me some riffs or something.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. I think it was great. And unfortunately I was at college at the time, but when I left, I did like full time in the summer, and he had a guy working for him, and he was like, look, I've got to get rid of him. He was an amazing guitarist. He was a great dude. He was an amazing guitarist, but he was so into theory that he'd be like, right, let's have a jam. And the guy'd be like, okay, cool. He's like, right, so I'm going to do it in E. And he went like, what, E diminished flat 7 into like, and he was like, no, just like E major. And then he was like, yeah, I'm really into like microtonality scales at the moment. And my mate was like, look, I've just had enough. I just want to play like blues and E. I'm just gonna have to let him go, and can you just start coming in on a few days? So yeah, it was thanks to him, really. But he obviously was well connected, and then working in bigger stores.
Yeah.
And then once I got to like a kind of manager level, and me and Jay Cross, who I do Guitar Nerds with, and Mark Packham and Joe, and we started to know people. They get to know people, and it becomes this amazing community, really. Cool. And everyone's in it for life. Really, like most people, if they're much older, have been doing it for such a long time as well. So there's this huge sort of wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, right.
It's a great place to be if you really want to be involved in it, and dive head first and kind of really give it your all. There's a great community of people out there. It's brilliant.
That's cool. In my hometown of Sydney, there's there's a lot of the bricks and mortar stores have closed down. Some of the chains have come and gone, but there's a few stores left that have been around, I don't know, since the 80s when I first started buying stuff, and the owners are still in these places, and all the musicians in Sydney know these guys on a first name basis. You know, there's Stan at the Guitar Factory, there's Doug out at Sunburst, there's Rob at the Guitar Lounge, and they've been around it forever, and they're well regarded and well known around the place.
Yeah, I think the stores that have lasted have kind of been the stores that have maybe kind of moved with the times as well. I think a lot of stores that maybe got left behind tend to be the ones that sort of maybe shunned kind of a modern movement of kind of e-commerce purchasing and online purchasing, and it's nice to know that there's some stores. I did a tour of UK guitar stores recently with some Japanese colleagues, and you know, so many people that own these kind of legendary stores that we went to have been there since day one. You know, and I think that's great, because once again they've kind of seen everything. You know, all the technology and everything kind of moved forward from there.
Yeah, cool.
Which is why it's a shame places like Denmark Street, in a way, you know, I remember going there even 15 years ago, and now there's barely anything left. And
okay, was that
part of it's a shame, but it's tough.
Yeah, was that like the big guitar row in London? I've heard that.
Yeah,
I've heard Denmark Street mentioned.
Yeah, Denmark Street was, or like Timpan Alley was like kind of the legendary street in the kind of I suppose the start of the 60s. So it was one street near Tottenham Court Road, near Soho, but basically all the bottom stores were basically guitar stores or music stores. In the basement grounds, that was generally all like music studios, and then in all the apartments above, it was kind of like producers, film producers, composers, publishers.
Okay.
But it's kind of people, once again, I think because the way things in guitar stores started moving forward and going more online, there's not a lot of space in those buildings for a start, like storage space, and it's not like a dedicated store that's maybe more of a destination you have to drive to.
Sure.
People started moving away, rents became expensive, and then unfortunately in the last kind of 4 or 5 years, they've decided to develop the station, because it's a really big station in central London, and a lot of those buildings have had to go, so a lot of those stores have kind of been forced out, really. But they also didn't modernise or move with the times, which I think has made it equally as difficult. But I remember going there at one point, not long after I started playing guitar, and it was like wall-to-wall guitar stores. I'd never seen anything like it until I went to Japan last year, and I was like, oh, okay, so guitar streets still exist somewhere out there.
Yeah. Awesome. Now you've been working for Boss for a while now. So as you said, you worked at GAC. Was GAC that store you mentioned that you're at for the 8 or so years?
Yes, so GAC, Guitar Amp and Keyboard Centre in Brighton.
Yeah,
was the kind of the first store where I kind of learnt my craft, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, cool. And you mentioned the Guitar Nerds podcast. That came out of the GAC store, didn't it, originally?
Yeah, it was Mark Packham's idea, which is the guy we do the podcast with.
Yeah.
I think he basically decided to leave working there full time. He'd worked at the store full time when I started, and for a while we kind of worked together. And then he decided to go back to kind of university and study something different and kind of do a course. It's something he'd always wanted to do. So he kind of did kind of like this media course, which involved like radio broadcasting.
Okay.
And he got really into like podcasts, were obviously becoming a really big thing at that time. I mean, they'd been big for a while, but it was kind of, there were more people doing it. It was easier for people to do it and get it out to the world. And there wasn't many guitar ones at the time. I don't remember us having a massive amount of kind of, I say competition, but I mean a massive amount of other people doing a similar thing.
Yeah, sure.
And we just decided to do a GAC one. He decided to do it because he thought it'd be great for kind of business. He finished uni, came back as a marketing guy. So he started doing all the kind of GAC marketing, and we just sort of sat down one day and kind of started recording. And I really want to go back and listen to that first one because I wonder how awkward we were for the first couple. But it was great. We used to finish work on, I think, like a Tuesday, and we'd set up all the microphones and everything. We'd get food in, we'd talk about gear. And I remember not long after that, when it went on iTunes, and at one point we were like top of the iTunes podcast chart for like games and hobbies for like 2 weeks, and we were like, oh my god, This is amazing! We'll never top this. And we ended up doing it for 2 years. So 100 episodes, 100 episodes before Mark decided to leave, and that was kind of the end of era one. And then it was kind of the decision to kind of carry on without him, which didn't really work. And then not long after that point, I think we did 4 episodes. And then not a huge amount of time after that, I kind of got my job, and outside of working in Brighton, because we all lived in the same town, and said, I don't know if it's going to work as a GAC podcast because I'm not going to work for GAC anymore. So then became the decision to do Guitar Nerds, and it was quite easy for us to kind of grab all the people that had been listening to the GAC one and kind of say, oh, we're still doing it, but now we're non-store affiliated, so we can kind of talk about whatever we want.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it sort of snowballed from there, really. It's become like a kind of crazy. It's made like a kind of beginning of a crazy adventure, really, over the last kind of 2 years. But yeah, 4 years in total. Nearly every week talking about guitars. It's been, and it's now for me being outside of guitar stores, it's been great to kind of keep up to date with what else is going on.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I love the show. It's really cool. And for a lot of there's quite a few gear shows out there, but to have a panel of 4 guys and you're obviously good mates, it's a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, I think there's been, sometimes, you're tired and you're like, oh, I'm not really feeling this, but it's always good to kind of, because I live in London, the rest of the guys live in Brighton, it's always good to kind of speak to the same 4 people every week and kind of, put this kind of massive body of work out there. And I think kind of just for future, it's amazing to think that, you could potentially listen back to 100 hours, of kind of like kind of riffing about guitars. It's kind of like a nice thing for, you think, when I'm in like my 70s, 80s or whatever, you think, oh yeah, I did this podcast for ages, or I might even still be doing it, you never know. But it's great. And I think what I really like about it is that I've always kind of thought, well, I'm never going to wow the world with my guitar playing, I'm not going to be a famous musician, but I've always loved helping people with guitar tones or kind of pedals or purchases, or so to know that my podcast that I'm involved in helps people make a decision that might change the way they play guitar for the rest of their life is kind of that gives me a kind of nice feeling. And it's nice when people come up to you and like, oh, I love the podcast and I bought this because of that. And and now people are starting to kind of, dealers and companies are starting to stand up and go, oh man, we'd really like to be involved. And that's great because especially what I do now, it's nice to kind of be involved in that side of DMI and kind of almost like product development in some ways, and kind of product testing and kind of helping people along. It's brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's talk about that. When did you start at Boss, and what's your role there? It seems like you're doing heaps of different things, really.
Well, I actually started probably a good time for this podcast. I think I started exactly 1 year on Tuesday.
Okay, great.
So it's been an entire year, and it was one of those things. I was talking about it with a friend yesterday who's just started. It was one of those jobs when I was like, you read the job description, you're like, this makes no sense. I have, when you read these job descriptions, like, I don't even know what half this stuff is. but yeah, it came from a friend, the guy I work with, Jamie Dorr. I've known him for years, once again through the industry, and he just put this job up. He was like, "Oh, we're looking for someone," and I read the job description, but I think I actually really just read the first line, which was like, assistant product manager, Boss Products, and it was just like, big knowledge of Boss pedals and this, and I just private messaged him on Facebook and said, "I want to apply. Like, how do I get this job?" basically. And he went, "Oh, it's pretty stressful and this, that, and the other." I was like, "Look, just get me in for an interview." And it went on for kind of months. I handed in my CV, and it kind of went back and forth for ages. And then I just went in for an interview, and he was just like, "Look, we need you to. I just need someone to help me. There's so much to do. I don't really want to like interview anyone else. Just, if you promise not to quit and you promise to just work really hard, it's going to be a good laugh." So I sort of said, "Yep, great." Handed in my notice and, started a year ago, sat down on the first day, and he's like, "So, what do we do?" And he's like, "Well, we're basically got to make sure that people buy Boss products." And there's been no solid job description like since then, really. Yeah. It's kind of learning on your feet the whole time and always doing something different and always being involved in something different. But I suppose the kind of easy description would be that I am a product manager, marketing manager for Boss for Europe, which also includes Russia and South Africa. Okay. So it's basically making sure that we still fly the flag high for Boss across those countries, but more recently been involved in a lot of global marketing and kind of product launch videos, and more recently kind of product development to a kind of minor extent, and working a lot with the Japanese kind of headquarters, and getting to see products from kind of phase 1 development all the way through to kind of hitting the stores. So the products that have come out recently that I've kind of had a hand in or help, or been helping develop the kind of marketing for months, it's amazing to see people actually buying it and going, "This product's great." And I get a great sense from that, and I think the engineers themselves, like, I can't imagine the kind of feeling that they must get. I mean, the guy that the engineer that developed the MS3 that came out recently, he is a bit older than me. I think he's kind of maybe like in his mid-30s. He's worked for Boss for a little while. That was his first head products where he was the head engineer, and it's been so well received, and he's just like, "Thanks very much for all your help. Like, it's been amazing. The response we've had has been brilliant." And I think he's really chuffed to see that so many people are like buying this product that he's basically like developed from the ground up. It's just like, amazing, really.
That's brilliant. I'm really interested, actually, when you mentioned that. You talked about seeing a project from phase 1 all the way through, and can we talk about the MS3 a little? Because I know you've been involved in different stages of that. I guess if anyone's not familiar, it's a loop switching device, but it's also got inbuilt effects and just a ton of different routing options. And you could probably describe it way better than I. But
I suppose an all-in-one kind of portable rig. The kind of initial design idea was creating a new. Boss have always done like world first, so I think the idea behind this was creating something that was like a new concept, as they kind of tagged it as an integrated pedal board solution. Mm-hmm. So people have kind of taken that a step further and want to use it in kind of ridiculous ways, and kind of like really expand their kind of already kind of big pedal boards.
Right.
But the kind of initial concept was actually you can take these big pedal boards, reduce it right down to its core elements, and just have a really small portable effects rig. Mm-hmm. Because I remember when I was building pedal boards, when I was kind of getting into guitar and buying more pedals, is I wanted one of every type. I wanted a phaser, a chorus, and a flanger, a delay and a reverb. Every type of distortion or overdrive, and that's great, but sometimes you don't need all that. You don't want to buy a flanger for one song, or you don't want to buy a phaser for a single riff, or
sure.
you don't want a chorus just to play "Come As You Are." You kind of just want one thing that does kind of bit of everything. And that's really where that comes in. It's your every core effect you could want is in there, but you've still got 3 loops that add in your favorite pedals. You don't have to limit yourself to just Boss products. If you've got a particular fuzz that you like, you can add it in, but you can add it in with the amazing Boss effects that are already in there.
Yeah, cool. So when does this start? Because as you and I are speaking, we're at sort of at the end of July 2017. It's been out, I don't know, for about a month or so. How far back? So when does the MS3 start?
I saw the initial concept in October last year.
Okay.
And it was a cardboard cutout, so it had already been basically designed at that point.
Yep.
So I'm assuming they'd worked on it for maybe a few months prior to that, and the core concept was there. But they are very meticulous about design, how things look, kind of 3D drawings and renders, and they basically already rendered it and had it printed onto a 3D cardboard model. So I actually got to hold it in effect in October last year.
Okay.
And it was the one, apart from the MD and RV, is the product that I was probably most excited about, because I also saw really rough ideas of those last year as well. And I was just like, I can't wait for these to come out. And it's like holding that secret for kind of, 8 months or whatever, 6 or 7 months, and kind of all these developments and kind of all these people online for 6 months going, I really need something that does this, or I need something that does that. And it's like, I've got a solution for you, but I can't tell you about it, and I can't even say that, I can't even say there's something coming or anything like that. It's all very kind of closed off, and it's the day it's announced is the day it's announced, basically. But yeah, so October last year. So these products are a long time in the works. They're not things that are kind of like stuck together. Like everything kind of starts with a seed of an idea, and it's built out from that. Yeah.
And where is this product designed, and where does all the testing happen? So you're obviously in Europe. The head office is in Japan. Where does all this stuff happen?
So Hamamatsu, which is a kind of, I don't know if it's a prefecture of Japan. I think it's actually just a city in a prefecture of Japan. And there's a place called Miyakoda, and that's where the headquarters has been for Boss for a number of years now. Boss has their own kind of like area, their own section, with a floor of engineers of maybe like 40 or 50 engineers. And everything is built, designed, tested, over and over and over again, all in-house, all on that site. The final mass production, unless it is a made in Japan item, is done, in Malaysia or Thailand, Taiwan, or China, depending on the product. But everything, development-wise, testing-wise, all the phases of kind of putting it together, it's all done by engineers in Japan, just the way it has been done since 1976, basically. And it's amazing to see, because they're building the circuit boards, they're testing everything, they're putting the breadboards together, they're writing the code, they're getting someone to design the manufacturing of the boxes. The boxes are being made, they're being sent over. It's all a very kind of this amazing kind of melting pot of product development, and I was lucky enough to spend kind of a couple hours walking around it, and it'd be nice to see it in a bit more detail at some point. But yeah, it's an amazing kind of workspace, because a lot of the engineers have worked for Boss for maybe 35 years. Those kind of engineers, Yoshi Ikegami, who's the Boss president, started working for Boss, or started working for Roland in 1978. So the company started in 1974. So he's worked there for nearly its entire its entire life.
Wow, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So so you mentioned the MD500 and the RV as well. So what's your involvement in those products? And I guess the MS3. What specifically did you get your hands dirty with that?
So I actually had cool thing with the MD and the RV is I actually had the software before the product itself was finalized.
Okay.
So during development, so we got asked to do the product launch video way back in February. So it takes a little while to kind of plan these videos exactly what we want. There's a lot of back and forth, making sure everything gets signed off. Storyboarding it, working out what's going to be best for the kind of consumer that's going to be after that particular product.
Yeah.
And we needed to get pedal boards built because we really wanted to do like a kind of real kind of nice gear video that kind of had some cool pedal boards on it.
Yeah.
And had all the pedals on it, and it looked really nice on camera, and we wanted someone just playing it, and we just wanted to show off the pedals. So I was like, right, we need some pedal boards built. And there was a minor delay in getting the final product. So they were like, oh, we've actually got the kind of beta software. So we'll send you the software, and you can kind of mess around with it from there. And so I had that. Then they sent the pedals over. We got the pedal boards built. We tested some of the sounds. The initial one I had no presets on it. And it was just kind of, they sent me the top panel. So when the top panels were ready, we had some top panels to put on a DD500 so we could see what it looked like.
Okay.
It was just a kind of cool sort of process, asking, oh, do these sound good? Does this sound good? Is there anything you suggest we add to the kind of final stage? But by the time I'd got it, I was like, the sounds in it was so good. And they were like, oh, yeah, we've developed this new simultaneous mode. The DD500 had it. We're kind of thinking of some new options. And, when I sort of started using it, I actually took the original prototypes to a friend's studio, and we were kind of messing around with it, and we were messing around with the stereo mode. And I was like, this thing is like, I think that's what's always been nice about Boss, is that they've kind of done something that's a bit like different. And they've always gone, okay, well, how can we be one step ahead of maybe what someone else is doing? And that simultaneous mode that allowed you to run two effects at once, but either in mono or in stereo, so you could have a phaser and a vibrato in two separate speakers. I was like, this is amazing, because you can start chaining these pedals together and actually send completely different signal chains out. So it's kind of, in the early stages, it's like maybe just suggesting an idea. Way back in October, and they were saying about the RV, I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great if it had the Space Echo on it? And then that ended up coming out on it, and then we were like, oh, it's great, there's a delay on there, but it'd be nice if there was some way you could link the DD500 to the RV. And they were like, well, we could put delay on every patch. And then obviously they developed that so that every reverb algorithm on the RV500 has a delay on it.
Okay. Cool.
So it's kind of like minor suggestions like that. We did the Katana Mini recently, and they sent me the prototype was the only one, and they said, can you come from America? They'd send it to America, they'd send it to us. Can you test it? Can you let us know what you think? And I was like, oh, I think we should change this, and maybe change the frequency response here. This is what I think of this. And then when we got the next version through, it had changed, and they kind of said, right, we've tweaked this and this, and it's nice to kind of actually know that your word is kind of having an effect on these products at the same time. But it does vary. Some things come to us like almost finalized. Some things come to us in like really early planning stages. Like, what's your opinion? What do you think we should do? But being involved in the product launch means that we generally get stuff quite early. So we'll actually get prototypes which are like not ready to be filmed or to be seen, because there might be minor cosmetic changes or sound changes. Like tweaks constantly happen, and then from that we get pre-productions, so like stuff that's basically final but it's not actually part of the mass production run, which is nice, because in my office I've got like serial number 1 of the Boss BD2 W Waza, I've got loads of the early CE ones. Awesome. I've got CE2 serial number 00000. So that's kind of cool. Like for me, being a massive Boss fan, like having these kind of cool pedals, like, oh man, this is like, when we did a video in January for the 40th anniversary of the Boss Compact, and we did this kind of rotating camera thing where we wanted all of the compacts that we'd ever done, and they sent us them all from the museum, and everything from the museum is basically the first one, the first prototype. And yeah, we got a DD2, and it was the original DD2, the first one. And I was like, this was the first ever digital delay pedal. This actual compact then became the final design for what was then mass produced, which then like completely changed the way that people think about delay. Because a digital delay, a compact pedal hadn't actually existed at that point.
That's right. Only when you hold these small pieces,
So what's crazy about that is that Yoshi Kagami, who's now the Boss president, he actually developed the SDE 3000, which was one of the last kind of real high-end rack mount ones. And then they kind of fed that down into compacts. Because I didn't realise until the other day the RV2 was the first ever digital reverb compact.
Okay.
And it's the only Boss pedal that actually, like, compact pedal that came with its own power supply. It was required so much power it wouldn't actually run on a battery.
Okay.
So they had to include a PSA with it.
Yeah.
And it's I think that's always been the nice thing, and especially for me in the last year, they're always trying to think forward. And that's why the Box 40, the 40th anniversary, was a great thing for me, because it was the first time that we kind of gone, we've actually reissued something. And we talked about it on Guitar Nerds recently about when we first met the Boss guys, and they were like, it's not the Japanese way to kind of ever look back. Don't want to ever reissue anything. We always want to look forward. Yep. So for us, it's kind of real, rarity for us to do this. And if we're going to do it, we're going to do it properly.
So when you say the Boss 40, that's the 40th anniversary of the compacts, and is that the set with the it's got the Spectrum and the phaser and the overdrive? Is that the traffic light set? I think they call it.
Yeah, which funny enough, when I was out in Japan last year, they were talking about doing a reissue, but of just one of them, and I said, wouldn't it be great if we did all three? And we did like a box set. I mean, amazing for kind of the company. It's so good to celebrate the kind of history. I know some collectors that would be massively into this. I think it would be great. We could keep the numbers sort of really limited. And sort of Yoshi sort of turns to the engineer and was like, do you think it can be done? And they went, well, yeah, I guess. And then we kind of came back to the UK, and then months later, and then the kind of more ideas started flying out, and then here we are in July with a fully formed released product. So for me, going from buying that Boss book to kind of seeing that Boss set, I could have dropped the mic and gone, do you know what, I've kind of like hit my peak. I'm kind of I never ever thought I would have done that, ever been involved in the company that I bought the book for, and then 10 years later ended up having a very small hand in the kind of development of a kind of historic product. Because there's one thing I can't deny, is that the engineers at Boss are just amazing people. They've developed technology and sounds that are used the world over, and they're always looking to do something different. When I spoke to them, I said, "What's your favorite compact?" And their favorite compact is always the last one they developed.
Okay.
Because they're like, we did something new.
Yeah, right.
I spoke to one of the guys and I said, what was your favorite compact? And he said, I really liked the ST2, which was the Power Stack, which did like a kind of Marshall and a high gain amp, and it was kind of had this like very gain control on it. And I was like, what other pedals do you work on? He's like, I did like slow gear, and I helped with DS1 and DS2. And I'm like, well, DS1 is kind of legendary. And he went, yeah, but the technology is sort of like very old. We've made it for 39 years. And he's like, but ST2 is new. It's got all this new stuff in it. So they have a kind of, and it's amazing really, because they have a slightly different perspective to how guitar players view things, where we always want, you're either a guitar player that wants something really old, you want to go back to that kind of 50s Les Pauls and 60s Strats, or you want pedals that do something, that do something similar, that give you all those old tones.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just amazing, really, because they were like, well, the technology's sort of old, we want to do something different. Not to say they don't like it, but they always kind of want to move forward, which I think is a great view to have, really.
Yeah, that's awesome. So progressive.
They've been at the forefront for that for so long.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing they're still going with that kind of philosophy.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned the DS1. I've mentioned this on this show before, but my very first guitar pedal was a second-hand Boss DS1 that I bought in 1986. I think it was obviously a made in Japan one then, and I loved that pedal. I could not believe it. I could not believe what it did. So exciting.
I mean, things that sort of didn't exist at that point. I was talking to Lee Anderton about the OD1 and Pete Nora about it, and I was saying, but before the OD1, overdrive pedals didn't exist. I mean, you take overdrive pedals for granted now, but they didn't exist. And I mean, a lot happened at the same time or around a similar sort of time, but the OD1 was the first one. It was the pedal that coined that term, and a lot of other classic overdrives we know now came slightly after it.
Yes.
And the OD1, no one really heard that, but the idea was that they were like, well, most people are using these big loud Marshall amps, but maybe can't turn it up as loud. What can we do to kind of push the front end? And the amazing thing is, I remember hearing that part of the reason you always see Boss pedals and you always see the controls facing straight up, it's not necessarily just for kind of cosmetics, but it's actually that Boss pedals are designed so that they're always easy to use. But if you put all the controls at 12, you're going to get a good sound.
Okay.
So the idea is, most pedals you kind of have to tweak it.
Yeah.
You kind of have to find those sweet spots. But it's like, no, if you're stuck, you can put everything at 12, and there's a kind of set sound from there. So it's it's amazing, really, that some of these pedals, like you say, a DS1, like something like that hadn't existed beforehand. So when most people went, I can have it in a floor pedal, like amazing.
Yeah.
I suppose we do sort of. Especially like guitar players now, young kids playing guitar. It's, there's so much out there. And even for us, there were pedals then. But when I talked to a few of my friends who are much older, they were like, at the time there was nothing. You could buy a fuzz pedal, you could buy a big muff, you could buy a fuzz face or whatever, but they were expensive. You couldn't really afford a big amp. Pedals just didn't exist. So. That must have been a crazy time, especially the late 70s when things started developing, and
for sure.
rack stuff started coming in the 80s, all the digital things. There's just so much of it, and so many Boss products. I'm compiling a list at the moment, and I think there's over maybe nearly 700 products that have had the Boss name put to it.
Wow.
Since 1977.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And that's not including all the technology that we developed that might have ended up in Roland products as well.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a kind of ridiculously rich history.
Yeah.
It's nice to be a tiny part of that.
Yeah, fantastic. I was trying to work out today, sort of leading up to speaking with you. I was trying to think: has there ever been a time when I haven't owned some Bosky, or I haven't had something Boss on my board? And I don't think there has been any time since 1986. I've sold stuff and moved stuff on. And in fact, my pedal board didn't have a Boss compact on it for a couple of years, but I was using a Boss volume pedal. And I've got an SD1 on my board now, and it was something comforting about having a Boss compact back on the board that I really loved.
Yeah, I suppose it's funny, really, because we've sold I think nearly 15 million compacts now, and they're just, everyone's got one, everyone's got a story. Everyone I spoke to about what I do, everyone's like, I remember my first Boss pedal, or it's got some sort of story behind it. And I must say, I mean, I'm the same. I think I've always had a Boss compact on my board at some point, whether it's a tuner or whether it is an effect of some sort. And there's a lot of people out there going, "Oh, Boss, Boss are rubbish, or Boss have had it, or why would you buy that when you can buy a Strymon or you can buy something else?" And I'm totally open to kind of all other pedals, and I've been into guitar pedals, for years. But I've always been a Boss fanboy, even before I got this job.
Yeah.
And I just went, well, nowadays it's like, why are so many people using Boss Compacts? Because they work, they're reliable. Why are so many pros using them? Because they know they can buy one anywhere in the world from pretty much any music store. They know it's going to work, and realistically, they probably know they are rarely going to break.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the reason they stood the test of time, is that they do have a great and classic sound. There's a lot of models in our product range now that have lasted an incredibly long time. I mean, the BD2 has been going for 26 years now.
Wow.
Metal Zone we've made since 1991. We've made the DD3 since 1988, the DS1 since 1978. All these, even things like the BF3 we've made for nearly 15 years now.
Wow.
And I think that's the reason so many people use Boss pedals is that the sounds have become classic. They've always been relatively affordable, and they're always really solid. So a lot of stores, you'd walk in and be like, well, you buy a Boss pedal, it's going to work, it's going to sound good, and it's probably not going to break on you.
Nice. Hey, we've mentioned the traffic light reissue, and the Boss DS1. There's been the black celebration issue of that pedal. Is there anything else in the works to celebrate 40 years of Boss compact pedals?
There is something that I will mention here that's not. We haven't officially announced it yet, but you'll hear a brief announcement of it here first. It's not a product, but me and my colleague are working on a pop-up museum, which will be in London sometime in September.
Awesome.
Which will feature a huge amount of Boss history. So a few people have probably seen, if you're part of the Pedal Wars of Doom Facebook group, that I've been posting pictures of kind of ridiculous amounts of gear that have been turning up on my desk.
Wow.
From all over the world. So as part of the 40th celebration, we are basically celebrating with a huge kind of Boss museum. So there's more details to follow on that real soon, but you kind of, I suppose, in a way, heard it here first.
Fantastic. That's cool.
So keep an eye on the Boss Facebook page, boss.info/UK. But yeah, more details to follow. But me and my colleague working super hard for the last kind of 6 months, sort of rough planning and everything, and it's all starting to come together. So hopefully everyone will get to come down to London and check that out, because I'm excited to see it kind of all in one place.
Cool. Sounds great. Sounds incredible, man. I'd love to get to check that out. Now, you're moving to Japan. I would have to fly. I think it'd be worth it.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, you're moving to. Speaking of flying, you're heading off to Japan for a few months. What's the story there?
Yeah. No. Once again, no official announcement yet, because we haven't really talked about it on the Guitar Nerds page. But yeah, I've been invited to go and work in Japan HQ.
Wow.
From September. So I will be doing a lot of marketing and kind of doing what I do in Europe, or for Europe, but with the kind of amazing marketing team in Hamamatsu. So I'll be working on the Boss floor with the entire Boss team right up until Christmas.
Wow, that sounds super cool.
Yeah, scary.
Yeah.
Super scary. I've not done a whole lot of traveling and kind of living by yourself in a kind of whole new place.
Yeah, sure.
And 12 hours away from home. It's going to be kind of pretty full on, but the Boss guys are great. They're so accommodating. The Japanese culture is incredible. The people were amazing. So it should be hopefully a pretty amazing trip. But there'll be more details to follow on that. I'm sure I'll make a full and official announcement at some point on the Guitar Nerds group when details are a bit more solid.
Yeah, cool, awesome, well, mate. We should let you go, but before I do, I did post on a little group I'm involved with, and as you are, that I was going to speak to you and see if anyone had any questions. And Michael Rigby asked this one: if you needed, Matt, a travel rig, I think he said that you could fit on a train trip for a gig. What would you put together?
Right, it's funny that he asked that because obviously with my impending trip, I was like, I can't be without guitar or playing for a few months. And I was like, well, actually, what works for me is I can't take a big pedal board. It can't be too heavy. So I thought, well, what can I do to kind of reduce it? And I probably won't be able to play an amp. The kind of apartments are quite small, and I don't want to make a lot of noise. So I'm actually building a small travel board at the moment, courtesy of Custom Pedal Boards. Chris Ryan in the UK. He built one of the MS3 pedal boards for us for the the video shoot that we did. And he kindly built me one with a bit of an extension for an expression pedal.
Yeah.
So I'm actually building a mini travel board that is smaller than a suitcase, that fits in an overhead locker that's got an MS3 on it, an expression pedal, and then space for 3 compacts. But instead of the third compact on the little spacer, but just above it, I'm actually going to put some sort of headphone amp. So I'll have the MS3, a couple of compacts, and then a small little headphone amp. And I think, to be honest, that will do everything. There's so many, as we've already mentioned, there's so many great effects, so many cool options in there. It's just going to be fun to mess around with. And good. I'll probably also end up taking my Roland Quad Capture, which is the interface I've used for ages, and my laptop. I'm actually probably just playing straight into Ableton with just some sort of like cab model or amp model, or just using a headphone amp and going straight in.
Sounds good, man. Now, what I was going to ask you, what's your favorite compact if you can commit to one? Given you've got space for 2 on this board, what do you reckon you'd pop on there?
Well, I think the pedal that I've always the Boss compact that I've always come back to for a number of years now, which I think is always just solid, and I think it always sounds great. And I always struggle with drive pedals, so I'd actually probably say it's a DD3, because I've had a few. I've got a couple now, and my kind of made in Japan sort of late 80s DD3,
nice,
because it just sounds incredible every time. Just few repeats, low level, it just sounds great. Another one, if I had to have one on there, just because the sound is so lush, is the DC2 Dimension Chorus, which is a pedal that I'd lusted after for years since reading the Boss book, and then finally bought one. And I don't think it'll ever leave my pedal board. It's just an amazing chorus pedal.
Is that the one with the buttons, the 4 buttons?
The 4 buttons, yeah.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, amazing. Such a cool bit of kit. And that in itself was actually the first ever dual BBD chip chorus pedal, I believe. So it's the first ever dual circuit chorus pedal. Because I think there's actually 2 chorus pedals in there that run simultaneously. Nice.
I had I had the DC3.
That actually had 2 names as well: the Digital Space D and the Dimension Chorus. I think, or Dimension Space D.
Mine was a Dimension.
At some point in the...
Yeah, I think Tim Green was telling me was the Space one was released in Japan or something only.
Yeah, quite potentially. He knows way more than me.
Yeah, he's onto it.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Very cool.
But yeah, that actually had 2 names in it, and it's been interesting kind of gathering all the compacts to kind of look at all the different sort of variations in names and stuff like that as well. So kind of trying to hunt down a few of those has been really nice.
Yeah, cool. All right. Hey, Matt, it's been so good talking to you. From one Boss fanboy.
Thanks very much for letting me tell the story.
Good to hear it. Absolutely good to hear it. And and all the best for Japan and for the pop-up museum and all the good stuff you've got ahead of you.
More details to follow. Obviously, sort of shameless plug. Obviously, the Guitar Nerds podcast has been great coming on here. So thanks very much for that. But obviously, there'll be more details to follow on the podcast and the Guitar Nerds Facebook group in the coming weeks.
All right. Sounds good. I will keep listening.
Cool. Thanks very much for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thanks, Matt.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there you go, Matt Knight. And that Boss Pop-Up Museum looks amazing. If you follow Boss Europe's Instagram, Matt's been posting some of the vintage pieces that have been turning up that they're going to exhibit at this museum, and it looks absolutely incredible. And there's some really cool gigs and things going on. Our friend Joe Branton from Polymath, his band will be playing at one of the events. The guys from That Pedal Show, including Daniel Steinhardt, who we interviewed last year, will be there as well. So looks like a fantastic event. All right, now don't go anywhere and make sure you are subscribed to us, because next week in the show we play our conversation with Dweezil Zappa. It was awesome to get the opportunity to speak with Dweezil, and it was a very cool conversation. So make sure you're tuned in for that. If you're not subscribed yet, this is the time to do it. We are on iTunes, Stitcher Radio and iHeartRadio, and lots of other podcatcher device things. So make sure you're getting the episodes sent to you, and you'll catch Dweezil and all the other good stuff coming up on the Guitar Speak podcast. We're also on Facebook and Instagram if you want to follow us there. All right, thank you so much for joining me. My name's Matt Wakeling, and I'll catch you next time on the Guitar Speak podcast. Bye now.